Hello, I'm Dapper Dan Gavosden, and I own every issue of Amazing Spider-Man, including the annuals, which definitely count.
Ooh, you're coming out on fire, Dan. Well, I am Mischievous Marcinacchio, and I, too, own every issue of Amazing Spider-Man. But, Dan, those annuals, they just don't count. And you really need to accept that and see God and move on with your life, okay?
Well, Mark, you said I'm coming out on fire, and it's easy to do that when you're hanging out in limbo. So let's get right to our conversation today. Welcome, everyone, to the Amazing Spider Talk, show where two fans and collectors uncover the strange, fun, punny, and fascinating history of the Spider-Man comic universe. Thanks for joining us for another of our review episodes of The Amazing Spider Talk. And Mark, I will say, we've been doing a lot of review episodes in a row here as we bridge our way to season 6, which, you know, we are starting real soon, we promise. So just hang in, everybody.
Yep. We're going to have a whole swath of seasonal content for you soon. Just hang tight. But in the meantime, if you want to swing along with us on our journey through Spidey's past, present, and future, subscribe to Amazing Spider Talk on your favorite podcast app.
Yeah, and this podcast exists because of the support of our Patreon members. So if you want to receive early episodes, exclusive artwork, and keep our podcast going, you can go to AmazingSpiderTalk.com, where you'll see a big button that says Patreon. Click on it, and you can consider signing up and supporting our show. Today on the show, Mark and I are going to be discussing Amazing Spider-Man Volume 6, number 18, also known as 912. This issue is written by Zeb Wells. This issue's cover is from artists John Romita Jr., Scott Hanna, and Marcio Menyz. The interior pencils are from Ed McGuinness, with inks by Cliff Rathburn, plus colors by Marcio Menyz, and this time he's joined by Erick Arciniega. And, of course, letters by VC's Joe Caramagna. It's also important to note that this issue was edited by Nick Lowe's evil clone, Albert Banaszak. And I don't know how long this clone is keeping hold of this book and changing its tone to be lighthearted. But for now, we got to deal with the machinations of that evil one. So this issue was first released on January 25th, 2023. Mark, it's time for our second rek-rap recap. Thwap.
Schwap. Or I don't know. We're doing this. That's the bottom line. So we open on Madeline Pryor and the X-Men. Apparently, they struck a deal in one of the other tie-in books that I did not read. And now Pryor is faced with the arduous task of telling Ben and Eve to stop. Ben continues to go full Deadpool. You never go full Deadpool. And says he's not going to stop until Peter eats the apple and he can get his memories back. Ben rightly calls out Madeline for her hypocrisy here. She only wants to stop because she got what she needed out of the deal, right? But before I want to call out all the creators for once again trying to tie something else to power and responsibility, in this instance, it's a scythe? Scythe? I can never say this word, Dan. What is it?
Scythe.
A scythe. Okay, I'll get this right. It's like scissors, but a scythe. Because with great scythes comes great silliness. Yeah, nailed it. We're past the cold open, and now we're on to Spider-Man and rek-rap fighting the Insidious Six. Excuse me, they're web whanging. Is the H silent in whanging? It's then wall crawling time, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of giggling here at this. Rek-rap uses his trusted Spidey Spranger, and the OG Spidey has it from here. That brings us to some tense dialogue between Madeline and Eve. Madeline starts talking about heads and crowns like she's not literally begging to be double-crossed here. I mean, seriously, right on cue, Eve puts on her magical Frankenstein Halloween mask, and before she starts tap dancing to "Put it on the Ritz," she grabs the scythe from Madeline and throws her presumably to her death. Although my guess is even Marvel's current editorial isn't silly enough to have Hallows Eve kill off one of their long-standing characters like Madeline Pryor. Spidey and rek-rap keep fighting their way out of limbo while Jonah pretends to be a demon, and hey, it works for him, so that's cool. Now we're back to Chasm and Eve, and Ben is all bummed about getting screwed over by Madeline until Eve is there to brighten his day with the scythe And after a few beats to beg the obvious, that leads us to the creation of King Chasm. Direct from his engagement as the boss battle in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, Secret of the Ooze, played by Kevin Nash. The good guys get to the portal back to NYC, but of course, King Chasm is superpowered and unstoppable, so New York City is damned and no one's going home. Spidey congratulates Ben for getting weirder. And then even rek-rap takes his lumps here, and Chasm is ready to march to the Overlands. So a dejected Spidey regroups with rek-rap, Jonah, and Robbie before he is joined by the X-Men and Madeline. And Madeline's all like, sorry for allowing that other guy to steal your soul and damn me to hell, but hey, he's got my army now, so we're gonna have a moment. Go team!
Wonderful, Mark. That was a great summation of nonsense, and I appreciated your approach to it altogether. Before we get into this, I just kind of wanted to talk about tonal stuff as we have, in these issues, which is to say, Zeb Wells has really taken a kind of silly approach to these titles. But Mark, have you read any of the other dark web tie-ins?
I honestly haven't, Dan. I mean, to get a fuller context of what's happening here, I probably should, but we've already talked about the fact that this is not my cup of tea, and I'm buying and reading these comics because I collect Amazing Spider-Man, and we talk about these comics on our podcast, Dan. So I just, no, I haven't. The short answer is no.
Yeah. Well, I actually think it's a shame because I have really enjoyed this event outside of Amazing Spider-Man. It's not the strongest event I've ever held, but I think most of the dark web tie-ins have really kind of threaded the line between silly and serious much better than this title, and most of them have landed in the realm of taking it fairly seriously, and that makes this stand out even more because it also seems like it came from a very different memo on what this event would ultimately be, and so you have major developments happening in the other titles that don't really match up with the stuff in this book. And the one I wanted to really point out that makes a really big impact on this title is the Dark Web X-Men book, which just wrapped up and showcased, Jean Grey and Madeline Pryor, exchanging fisticuffs and ultimately coming to a kind of empathetic, mutual understanding where Jean Grey gifted her memories to Madeline Pryor. And you see the fallout of that in this issue. And it's so hard to go from an issue like that, which is actually really well written and grounded and really taking these characters seriously, to an issue like this one where that's referenced and then you get a character turning into Frankenstein and defeating Madeline Pryor, who, let's admit, is a clone of Jean Grey, and getting pushed off a cliff. Is that the best resolution to that arc? I mean, granted, she's not dead, but
No.
Stealing her power by doing a pratfall, it just doesn't square with the stuff that we've been getting in the other titles. And I just don't really understand why Zeb took this approach. And I'm sure you agree with me, Mark. At this point, it's fair to say writing this so dumb is a conscious choice by Zeb Wells.
Oh yeah, 100%. There is, I mean, however many installments in we are. Is this 3 or 4? I forget. But like you said, this is a very conscious choice. I mean, probably the most toned down version of the story we got was in the the dark web alpha or whatever, the kickoff, which was meant to kind of kick off the entire event. So I think that needed to be kind of a little more I don't want to say dumbed down because it's dumbed up or dumbed less. I don't know, but you know what I'm saying, right? I mean, am I misremembering even how that issue was? Am I confusing it with the prelude? Either way, I feel like the very, very beginning of this was a little softer with the dumb edges, And then like the last three issues of ASM have just like completely leaned into this tone, and that is an interesting point. I now I kind of want to read these other points, but like I'm also like, again, like not to be like completely ambivalent about it, but like I tried reading like Madeline Pryor stuff in like the 80s when she first started appearing in X-Men, and I was just kind of like, this is weird, I don't get it. So like I don't know I don't know how much of this I really want to get into here. Like in terms of like, do I want to go down this rabbit hole of this story? But yeah, I this is just tough stuff, Dan. There's just no question. But like you said, it's a conscious choice. So like, I guess within, if you want to grade it on that curve, it's like he's, at least he's consistent. He being Zeb Wells, right?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see, because Zeb Wells is going to write the finale to this, and my guess is it's going to go back to the tone of the Dawn issue,
Right.
So, and that's the same guy. So,
yeah,
like, he's not even consistent with himself, it seems. But I did want to say for listeners and for you, Mark, like, I would strongly recommend some of these other titles, specifically the Gold Goblin issues, which I actually think have really successfully taken the threads established by Amazing Spider-Man with Norman Osborn and done something really interesting with it. Like those feel much more in tone with the Amazing Spider-Man book that we were getting. And what's interesting is like as much as I've liked many of these B books, like the Mary Jane one and Black Cat one, which like weirdly hints at the status quo of Mary Jane and what's been going on with her. The more they kind of avoid dark web, the better they are. Like a lot of them have really kind of had it on the edges of the story. And I like that a lot. Like Venom actually really used dark web to play into its labyrinthine plotting in a really interesting way that's been building up to for a while. And you could see Ram V and Al Ewing, the writers of that book, using it in a really interesting way to motivate their story. So it's weird that like Amazing Spider-Man just stands out like this. And then I'll add one last thing, which is like, and it probably gets to some conversation we'll have later, which is if Jean Grey, you haven't read the issue, but in the issue of the Dark Web X-Men #3, Jean Grey literally gifts her memories to Madeline Pryor. Like, and I don't mean like she removes them from her head. She copies them and makes her experience it, which makes me ask, like, couldn't they just do that with Peter and Ben? Like there literally needs to be zero sacrifice here, and maybe we're past that at this point, and Ben is just acting like Looney Tunes, and that's just his characterization. But it seems like there's a very easy fix, like already built into this story, and maybe we'll get it in the finale or something. But like reading this issue after reading the Dark Web X-Men #3 makes it all the more like frivolous, if it wasn't already super frivolous.
Yeah, I mean, I won't. I have pre-opinions on that kind of outcome, but I won't get into that because that's just not fair or right. But let's just say, like, obviously, with all this silliness, the characterization of Ben is, something interesting here throughout the story. And yet, I will say for the first time in Dark Web, I kind of sympathized with him at the start of this issue here when Madeline is just like, all right, we're done here. And he's just like, wait, what the heck? You know what I mean? Like that just like, I was kind of, I had two kinds of reactions to that. Both were of anger, one of which was like, angry for Ben, because it was just like, come on, like that's not right. You're that's making him totally disposable. And then, now granted, obviously it's not how it ultimately played out in the book, but like at the onset of the book, I was kind of like, are you bleeping kidding me? They're gonna like abort this whole thing now because of Madeline? I said, like, how much are we devaluing Ben here in terms of this story? But they did salvage that, if you will. But either way, like, what did you think of that whole interplay in the beginning there with Ben and Madeline?
I like it as a beat. I wish I believed it more.
Yeah.
You know, like I have no reason to understand why Madeline would savage him in that way. Like, there's no clue to it in Dark Web X-Men #3. She does suggest there that, like, it's time to put a close to this and bring the demons back, etc., because she's gotten what she wanted in a fairly empathetic way. She's become a softer character, as a result. And, like, I haven't read the X-Men comics with her, but, like, I can only imagine the, like, weight of history that goes into seeing Madeline Pryor, get, healed in such a fashion for X-Men readers. But yeah, I mean, so, like, I like it as a beat, but I don't think that we've, like, built to this, and, like, even Janine's, like, response where she's like, we're used to being shoved aside and we'll always handle things on our own. Like, that's consistent with the Beyond arc, I think. And so, if the story was about that, and I believed in the Ben character enough, like, those beats would have worked really well for me. And like you said, like even now with a flimsy story behind it, I still bought it a little bit.
Yeah, although you in explaining that kind of raised an interesting point, which is the fact that, I think for X-Men fans, this resolution between Madeline and Jean is interesting. I mean, I don't know what X-Men fans are thinking of this, and again, I don't know if I want to go down that rabbit hole of finding out, but but my point being is that this is a character, and I kind of joked about this in the synopsis, like, Madeline Pryor has a lot more history and weight and gravity behind her in terms of her relationship to these characters and her relationship to Jean. And, yes, Ben Reilly as a character goes back 30 plus years with Spider-Man. But the fact is, like, this chasm development is, nothing has been earned here, like, and it's, and so much of this has been layered in silliness and like sight gags and dopiness, frankly, that, like, I don't know, like, it's hard to, like, look at the weight of the two antagonists in this story and ultimately come away feeling that, like, we're really supposed to take the plight of Ben and Eve or Janine with much weight anymore. You know what I mean? Like, it just, like, per this, what we said at the very, very beginning of this review, this is a conscious decision, but I feel like in doing this, Zeb is, like, undermined the plight of his own characters here. Like, maybe if he did treat them with some gravitas, like, we would care about all of this. I mean, from a subjective, being very objective about it, like, Madeline was really being a hypocrite here, but like you said, is it really earned? Not really. I mean, it's just kind of like, okay, well, that's an interesting beat, but, in the grand scheme of things, it just kind of gets lost in, Ben becoming Super Shredder. So I don't know, like.
Yeah. And, just to kind of, and we probably have hit this point before, which is, like, it's so weird to me to see Zeb undermine the character that he spent 19 issues building up and establishing, real stakes for. And, I think we're going to talk about this later in the episode, but, like, this is really sold as a tragedy, but then to, like, make him so dumb, like, I've never seen someone put in all the work. Not that we loved everything about Beyond, but you can admit at least, like, it was work. Like, they chose to, like, heighten Ben Reilly as a character, to bring him out of relative obscurity and, invest that much of the title on him, even if it was a stopgap, but to then, like, just kind of, like, wash that away. It's just really an odd decision. Like, I don't know a creator that is that, not, like, imprecious about the work they've done. Which, like, based on everything I've read of Zeb Wells, he seems like a guy who puts a lot of care into these things. So it's just very strange altogether. So from a negative, I want to talk about the positive, the bright shining light of this issue. And if my Twitter is anything to be believed, I posted images of rek-rap, and it was the farthest a tweet I've ever tweeted has ever gone. I thought my viral thread, so to speak, on the end of the Nick Spencer run was something. Just posting images of rek-rap and saying I like this guy went really far. So there is something, I know I said rek-rap had Razorback potential. I'm really sticking by it. I think he was really fun in this issue, and I wouldn't say redeems the story, but was just a lot of fun. But at the same time, I'll say this: I love you, rek-rap. I never want to see you again. Do not overstay your welcome.
Or at least I don't want to see you for several years or something.
Yeah.
That's a joke that you could pay off again in a few, after a healthy absence, I would say.
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I'm out of the prediction business, but there is a part of me that is concerned that, the popularity, if you will mean that rek-rap is going to overstay his welcome a bit. But I mean, maybe not. I don't know. I mean, it's funny. This is like as within the realm of this. And look, I hate to be so pejorative, but I'm just going to say it. Within the realm of this dumb comic, it works really well. I went from some of this stuff is cringy in the last 3 issues, but this is cringy but funny cringy, yes. I'm laughing at it. It's sincere laughter. I don't know what other notes I can give besides the fact that it's dumb but used well. It's funny dumb.
I never knew I wanted to see Spider-Man as a Ninja Turtle, but I'll take it. I'll take it.
Yeah.
I had some fun with it. And my fear is, I don't know if you've read Saladin Ahmed's Miles Morales run, but the Shift character was one that was introduced in the Clone Saga and should not have survived the Clone Saga. I don't need a character hanging around and saying thwap, thwap, thwap and glorp, glorp, glorp for, 20, 30 issues. It's just not what I want, because rek-rap will bring that tone with him,
Yes.
And it's just, maybe every time Ed McGuinness comes back, he'll bring back rek-rap. But, to me, the joy of rek-rap will be that he was stuck in this really weird story, and we can all just acknowledge, hey, wasn't it weird that time that we got a Ninja Turtle Spider-Man? That's kind of charming. But end of the case. Razorback only has a place in my heart because he's in those couple issues of Spectacular Spider-Man. I know he's shown up since, but in my heart, he fought Brother Sun and Sister Moon and then exited stage right and went back to Texarkana with his, Boss Hog or whatever the name of his vehicle is, Big Pig. And we never saw him again, totally fine for me. Yeah, till my action figure. Yeah, well, now I get to see him every day because I've got the action figure here on my desk. But I laughed at web wanging. I laughed at wall crawling time. I got no notes. Those are gold. They're really funny. Don't repeat them.
All right. Well, where's a place where we can repeat things ad nauseum, Dan?
Is it in one of our ads?
No, well, yes, and that ad is our ad for the Slack. Can I talk about the Slack for a minute here?
Mark, I would never stop you talking about the Slack.
I mean, especially since I spent so much time there. Well, hundreds of listeners like you hang out in our community of Spider-Man fans on Slack. The amazing Spider Slack community is absolutely free to join, and you can jump into active conversations with awesome people about collecting, conventions, movies, new comics, old comics, and more, like rek-rap. But Dan, what is going on in the Slack this week? Talk to me.
Well, Mark, to your point about yourself, people have just started tagging you in things on the Slack. Just loosely, half the time they're actually about you. Like someone read your book and really enjoyed it, or they want to get your opinion on something. But it's become kind of a bit of a meme because we're waiting for you to sign back in and just experience a true deluge of your name being tagged.
Okay.
But yeah, I look forward to the day where you just get bombarded by tags. But either way, it's been an incredibly weird week in the Slack, Mark. For whatever reason, we got to asking the question, has there ever been any not safe for work fan art of Kindred? And we kind of settled on the fact that like Rule 34 of the internet states that there must be some somewhere. And then that begged the question, is there some of GOG? And it just didn't get better from there. I mean, use your imagination. So I mean, what are you all waiting for? I mean, seriously, isn't that the kind of content you're looking to talk about? Come join our amazing Slack. Mark, how you feeling?
This is how you sell people. I was all like, oh, maybe I'll log in and see all these tags. No, I will not.
I'm not saying we posted not safe for work artwork of Kindred and GOG, but I am saying if it exists, it may find its way to the Slack. I'm going to have to create a channel just for that. Anyway, yes,
I gotta go full Gen X here and bring up like Jason Lee's character from Mallrats, and it's like just a thing. Is his dork made of stone? I mean, you know, so
is Kindred's dong made of bandages? I think this all started with me asking, "Hey, wait a minute, why did Kindred have magic powers? Why was he bandaged? Why did he have centipedes?" None of this, I think, was answered in the pages of the comics. Who knows? But anyway, what's under the bandages became like the bigger question. So anyway, if any of that sounds interesting to you, or you just want to nuke it from orbit, come join our amazing Slack. There's a link in the description of this episode, and that'll let you sign up in less than a minute. And if you're listening to this and like you were half paying attention and this woke you up, like a scene out of Community where you just come back and everything's on fire. Like that's the feeling of the Slack right now. So anyway, not safe for work, Kindred fan art in the Slack. Sign up.
All right. Well, we're going to go from bad to worse here, Dan, because we're going from Kindred not safe for work to King Chasm.
All right, it's good to be the king, and maybe there's not safe for work artwork of Chasm.
All I'm gonna start this conversation with is me saying like, when I referenced earlier with rek-rap that I was giggling throughout his stuff early on, like I'm reading this comic. And like Dan, like when King Chasm appeared, I legitimately groaned. I was just like, "Oh no, what are we doing? Like this is, oh God." You talk about it for a second here, because like oh God, like what is this?
I want to drill down in this. Was it the design? Was it the fact that he was as tall as a building? Is it just like the very idea that we're like doing a level up Big Boss to wrap up this event? Like from what part of your soul did the groan emanate?
Yes, to all of that. Like it's just like the design is dumb. Is the concept is dumb. Like you said, it's a boss battle. Like you know, we had to make Ben even more superpowered and unbeatable, and like it's just like none. You know, if none of this was earned earlier in the story in terms of the stakes, now it's really out the window, because it's just like he's got a scythe and he's King Chasm, and he looks like he looks like Super Shredder. I'm sorry, like I'm sure I'm like the only one who listens to this show that's like, you know, like look, when I was in whatever grade that was, I think it was 4th grade, and Ninja Turtles 2 came out and Super Shredder came out, I was like, yeah, that's awesome. And then, like, you know, I've gone back and it doesn't age well. And there's nothing about this that aged it looks good now in the future, 20 years from now. It's all dumb, Dan. It's dumb. It's dumb. It's so dumb.
My first reference when I saw this was the devil from Disney's Fantasia. Like that was the design. But I see Super Shredder, the idea of like, it's not just spikes. He's got spikes on spikes. You know, like
yes.
It's that design concept. You know, and we have said that like Dark Web is very much like a 90s pastiche, and like to me this was like like the worst excess of 90s comics was like just like hardcore designs. Look how big he is. He's got pouches on top of pouches. You know, granted, you know, that kind of thing works well in the backpack. But yeah, I don't know, man. This got a groan out of me too, but mostly just for like, we're just following the event playbook. Like, we got to have a big boss, and we got to have a big blue laser coming from the sky, and it's got to have like world-ending stakes, and everybody's got to team up to take down the big guy. That they punch it just hard enough, you know, it's going to go down. And again, I don't know how this is going to resolve, but like, I thought that this story was going to be a little more personal than this, you know, especially since like Nick Lowe sold this arc on like tragedy for Ben Reilly. Like, all the interviews have said, you know, we didn't have anything to do with this character. We didn't know what to do with him. So we thought we'd bring him back and give him like a tragic end. And like, if you're going to bring him back, like, I hope you had something cooler than making him the size of a New York skyscraper. Like, it's just not what I want to read. And honestly, as much as I like to push back on like idiots on Twitter that like to say Spider-Man comics are ruined every day because Mary Jane isn't dating Peter, and how dare you cut short the Nick Spencer run, however much truth or not truth there is in that. The people who are like big Ben Reilly fans, like, I kind of pouring one out for them. Like, if you're screaming character assassination, like, I'm not going to quiet you at this point, because this bears no resemblance to Ben Reilly.
Yeah, 100%. And I do want to like kind of pick nits with something you said, Dan, where it was like, well, you know, this is kind of like the event comic pastiche. And I'm like, well, yeah, I guess. But like, I don't know, like in Infinity Gauntlet, it's not like Thanos became like, you know, super mega Thanos. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, to me, like, this is, you know, from a narrative standpoint, this is committing the crime of you know, telling, not showing. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, you know, we're not gonna actually show a story of Ben progressing to this point where he obtains this massive power, because there's no reasonable way to do it, because like, it's just not part of the character's biography, and there really was no reasonable way to do that. So instead, we're just gonna like, you know, click our fingers and superpower him up. It's like, you know, this reminds me, it's less about comics and more about like, this is like the end of a video game where it's like, oh, I'm in Castlevania and I just beat Dracula, but wait, no, it's mechanicalized Dracula with a floating head that shoots fire. You know, like, it's so dumb. Like, I this is like not the right kind of hybrid media here. You know what I mean? Like, this is just like throwing stuff against the wall and being like really grossly unintelligent about it. And yeah, it's character assassination. Like, this I don't know, like, okay, I am gonna break my rule. When you mentioned earlier, like, oh, can't Madeline, like, in the conclusion, just give Ben his memories back? I don't want this Ben to have his memories back. Screw this Ben. Like, it's like, this is so unenjoyable. I don't want to see redemption here, because this is not worth redeeming. Not because Ben Reilly is not worth redeeming, but like, what they've done to this character, it's not worth, like, to walk it back would be even more infuriating, because it's, well, why did you go this far with it if you were just going to walk it back in a hand wave way, you know? So that's all I got to say. It's the kind
of thing that would like be very like bad for this individual story. But like for the character long term, I'm like, okay, like, take it a different direction. This is not the direction I want this character going in.
Well, so, if they do that, like, and then like, he's got to join rek-rap, and like, I can't see Ben Reilly for the next 5 years. You know what I mean? Like, you know, like, because this is like really like soured me on Ben Reilly. You know, if this is the best they could do with this character.
Well, I mean, great. Like put him away for 5 years. Like, get him out of the hands of people that don't know how to use him. You know, like again, Nick Lowe said in the back of like the letters page in one of these books that like they didn't know what to do with the character. Like, right. If this is the end of the character, like, don't keep doing things with him if you don't know what to do with him. Like he's fine. He was forgotten for years and no one cared. You know, not that nobody cared about the character, but like people were fine letting him rest. You know, and like let the character rest up, please.
I mean, I ultimately blame people like me who, like, you know, went back to their childhood and, like, tried to find value in the Clone Saga because, and we've like adjudicated the Clone Saga so much, like, oh, it didn't have to be as bad as it was, it didn't mean to be, it wasn't supposed to go this long, these characters were supposed to have more stories, and hey, look, these characters were actually kind of popular, and blah 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 blah. You know what? Clone Saga was not good.
Wow, Mark is like, he's just been beaten. He's just a beaten pup.
And we just don't need to recycle anything from it anymore. Like, maybe now, like, it's been, Dan, we've been doing this show almost 10 years now, and 10 years ago was like the peak of the Superior Spider-Man era. So maybe, like, some of the next wave of creators are going to want to like relitigate Superior Spider-Man. So we're going to get like a whole new era of like bringing back stuff from that. We're going to see Menace again, or not Menace, Massacre. And we're going to finally find out like what happened to Massacre.
Yeah, is he dead? Like I thought he was dead, but then he wasn't dead. Yeah. No, I'm calling it, Mark. We're getting a Judas Traveler is swapping brains with Peter Parker. That's the next big thing. So like we are at the end here of this mini arc, and I think we've kind of said like a lot, about it. My conclusion is that it was too stuffed to the brim with ideas and tones, but also that it felt like it was spinning its wheels until the finale can return back to the regular tone and wrap things up. Like, I don't know why. I mean, maybe like Zeb needed to get ahead or something, but it just feels like a tragic miscalculation in tone, to the point that I even wrote a letter into them, almost like retroactively walking back my praise that was printed in the back of the other letters column. Like, but my real hope is not to criticize it. It's like, I want to know like what's going on that like this book could take such a turn like this. Like, what's going on in the office? Like, peel back the curtain. Why did we need to do this? Like, what cards do they have that I don't have that like would help me understand why they felt like this was the direction that this title needed to go? And if it's nothing, it's just like whatever, like we're letting them do whatever. That's good to know too.
Yeah, I got nothing else to add to that, Dan. I mean, like I've been beating this thing up pretty badly. Yeah, I mean, not to kind of echo conversations we've had offline, but like there's a part of me that's like, maybe there's really not a story to this. Maybe they just wanted to do a fun, silly story with Ben Reilly to take the edge off of what's been going on in a more serious manner the last few months in this book. I don't know, but I'm not the target audience here. That's clear. I'm willing to chalk it up as just a miscalculation. Like they didn't realize how big of a break that this would be from their story. Or they thought people might be desperate for a break from that story, which I think it's safe to say no, people weren't. But then I go on like Comic Book Roundup, and I was like, I'm curious how the rest of the internet, like in official places, are responding to this. And of course, it's glowing reviews. Yeah, well, that's
like
I was about to
the
say,
board, so.
Are people liking it? Because like if they're liking it, then there's your answer right there. I mean, we would have this same issue a lot of times during the Slott era. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not someone who likes to slag on Dan Slott like for everything he's done, but there were certainly plenty of stories that were not my cup of tea that I thought were kind of this silly and irreverent in a bad way, and people loved them, and it was kind of those stories would always be like a look in the mirror moment for me where I'd be like, hey, maybe this isn't for me anymore. I don't know. But, hey, Dan, you're for me and you keep me going. So I'm always going to be here talking Spider-Man, even when the stories are not catered towards me. That's the bottom line.
I mean, I think the good news is we're about to get back to stories, I imagine, that are going to be very much for us. I mean, obviously, we're going to get the finale to this, which I'm looking forward to just because I think it's going to get back to the tone that was established, and I'd like to at least put an end cap on this story in some way. and like see what direction they want to take Ben in. You know, I mean, I'm not like enthusiastic about it, but like it'd be nice to kind of put like a pin in it if possible. And then we're gonna get, you know, obviously the Joe Kelly led stuff, and I'm up and down on Joe. You know, he does one of my favorite Spider-Man stories ever with The Rage of the Rhino, and then he does, you know, this kind of like weird nonstop Spider-Man, you know, stuff that he was doing. So we'll see what those two issues are like. But, you know, all I know is I'm thrilled to get the conclusion of this What Did Peter Do storyline. We started to get the solicits for the covers, and Mark, I know you don't read the solicits, but I had to send some of these covers to you because they're really cool looking. So
where's available Alan to make fun of you with me right now? No.
Yeah. Hey, look, covers are cool, man. I like looking at a good cover. It gets me a little bit hyped for the future. And when you're in the depths of dark web, you kind of want to like pin your hopes on something down the line. So Mark, what grade are you giving this book?
I'm gonna go C- strictly for the rek-rap stuff.
I'm the same way. C-. Like, I did get a lot of joy out of that character, and end of the day, like, I'll buy a rek-rap action figure. Like, the dude is just charming. So, you know, like if we can get like a diamond in a serious sea of roughness, fine.
But what happens if the character, it's a 2-pack and it's rek-rap and King Chasm?
Oh, well, then I'll have rek-rap stand on King Chasm like it's a stand for the action figure.
I need to see if I could find my Super Shredder figure from the 90s, and then I could just put like Chasm's head on its head stand instead. You know what I mean? Like, anyway.
I love it. Mark, why don't you take us home?
I will. Well, it's that time for all good things to come to an end. So we want to say thank you to you, the listeners and viewers, for tuning into this episode of The Amazing Spider Talk.
Yeah, this podcast exists because of listener support on Patreon. For only $3.99 a month, you can help support our show's existence while getting early episodes, including these reviews the same week the comics release, exclusive artwork, and a ton of other bonuses. So like if you picked up every book in Dark Web and you've enjoyed our coverage and you were like, hey, maybe there was a book in Dark Web I didn't need to read, or you just have like, you know, some kind of liquidity to your wallet, like why not throw a couple bucks our way? Like Mark and I put a lot of work into these reviews to make them special, and we'd love to have your support. But as always, a thank you to everyone who already supports us and what we do, because it's a big help and it allows Mark and I to devote the amount of time and resources it takes to put this show on.
To download our earliest episodes, including interviews with legendary creators like JMD, Tom DeFalco, Ron Friends, Mark Bagley, and more, subscribe to our Amazing Spider Talk Back Issues podcast on Apple Podcasts.
This podcast episode was edited by Rick Coast. The video version of the show is available on YouTube and was edited by Alex Galecki. Our artwork comes handcrafted by artists Ron Friend, Sal Buscema, and Ray Sumser. Our theme songs were produced by Rylan Bojack, Tony Thaxton, and Spider-Madge. And our animated intro was created and performed by Josh Sutton. So Mark, until you push me off a cliff and supplant my throne as queen of this podcast, what's our motto?
Do I get to wear a Frankenstein mask when I do it?
I could only hope so.
All right. Well, then it's, with great podcasts, there must also come the Amazing Spider Talk.
Don't miss the next installment. Spider-Man seems a web. Any size. Catch your teeth.